Good afternoon, good evening. What is up? Another episode of the Mangxiety Podcast. This time, in a weird way, I'm really speaking to the hearts of men and the women that are dating and married to these men. I want to help expose a little bit of clarity and practical, actionable steps to move forward. I've uncovered a huge blind spot. I love the term blind spots. I've been using the term blind spots in a lot of my emails. I think I will do that for every single email and podcast that I ever do from now on, because the way that we tackle our blind spots very openly, humbly, is the degree of transformation that we're going to have to change. Carl Jung said, unless we make the unconscious conscious, it will rule your life and you'll call it fate. In other words, unless we take what's been unconscious to us, which is what a blind spot is, it's something that I'm unconsciously doing. Like if I'm constantly interrupting, this is what I would do with my friend Russ, Dr. Russ. I would constantly interrupt him and I didn't know that I was doing it, and he would point it out to me and other people on podcasts, and people would say, don't interrupt him. And I'd be like, what the hell? And I realized it was an unconscious response to feeling like I needed to get my point across, just like when I was younger with my brother. And so because Russ is like a brother, unconsciously he will activate certain parts of me that would cause me to react just like when I was younger. This is what this is what a blind spot actually is. And we all have them. For us to say that we don't have them would be equivalent of being like Donald Trump saying, I'm perfect, I have no blind spots. That's not true. We all have them. We can't see them. And that's why we need one another. And unless we take on our blind spots with a heroic amount of courage and humility, we will forever be stuck repeating certain patterns. Let me say that again. Unless we take on the exposure of our blind spots with courage and humility, we will forever be finding ourselves under these repetitive patterns, wondering why you keep dating the same type of person, different haircut. I saw one woman a couple weeks ago, 4 marriages and divorces, another woman, 7 marriages and divorces. Huge blind spots. It's painful for me listening because I see them in the emails that you send me. I can feel them. And the reason why I left chiropractic, if you know a little bit about my history, I'm a doctor of chiropractic. The reason why I left chiropractic was because I kept seeing people's blind spots coming in with chronic pain. And I wanted to tell them, you're holding on to this because it's getting you attention. You don't want to heal from this because it's getting you a compensation check. You're holding on to all of this that's happening in your neck because of what's happening in your marriage. You're not dealing with it. And people would get fucking triggered. They would get like, what the hell? You're here to crack my neck. And I was like, you're right. You're absolutely right. And I can't do this anymore. Eventually, it was about 2013 when I said, I want out. I want to just talk to people that are willing to have their blind spots revealed so that they can heal. Because if you're not willing to have your blind spot revealed, you're basically saying, no, just keep me in the dark. I know what's best for me. And I don't want to deal with the truth because the truth hurts. And I'd rather just lie to myself. And I was like, it doesn't feel good to work with those people. So I did what every chiropractor, almost, I would say 90% of chiropractors dream of doing, who've been doing it for more than 20 years, is to leave chiropractic and really delve into teaching where health truly comes from. There are chiropractors out there that truly love it. It's their art and I respect them. I love going to get adjusted by them. And then there's other chiropractors that clue in after about 10, 15 years, or your body worker, or your massage therapist, or your personal trainer, or your physical therapist, or your osteopath, or naturopath. They all, who's been really paying attention and who've really been walking the path of healing, not just kind of like hanging their hanging their diploma on a shingle and saying, hey, I'm there, I'm done. No. A true healer it's a path. It's a walking path that they're living themselves. Anybody who's done that for more than 10 years will tell you that there's a lot more to why the person is sick than what they know. And this is where the blind spot comes in. So now I run an academy. It's called the Cycle Breakers Academy, of people that are willingly wanting to look at their blind spots and then actually make the shifts so that they can produce different results, so they can stop blaming other people. And when I've been getting on calls with women over the last couple of, like a month, over 30, now over 40 of these calls, I had these massive, I was helping them with blind spots. I was like, listen, if you're willing to have me tell you, and you're willing to just listen from my intuitive kind of sense and my experience of 20 years of being a chiropractor and then working through my own trauma bond, healing from codependency, becoming the type of person that went from avoidant, not able to commit to a woman, constantly looking for sexual validation outside, not being satisfied with one, to now being a family guy, beautiful 3-year-old. He's almost 4. He turns 4 in a few weeks at the recording of this. And we genuinely love being with one another. And we're having better now than we did before we had a kid. And I'm not saying it was easy to get there. And I'm not saying it was just automatic without a little bit of work, without a lot of work. That continues to this day. So I'm speaking because the work actually lives in my bones. And today I'm actually wanting to help men with a specific pattern that I've seen, which is 3 blind spots as well. There's many more, but there's 3 big ones that I want to share of why she wants to leave you, even if you're loaded, even if you're a multimillionaire. That doesn't matter. I've worked with several kind of high profile cases that have empires, that have businesses, that have big audiences. I seem to attract those types of people because I was one of those people with a big audience living some sort of incongruency that blew up in my face because of my inauthentic way of being. There was a situation where the police were involved because my relationship before I was in this marriage was volatile. We were doing great work, but I hadn't healed at a somatic level. I hadn't healed my attachment wounds. I didn't know what a trauma bond was. I didn't understand how to integrate a trigger when we were triggered. We were involved in the anxious, avoidant, infinite loop of doom dance where her anxiousness pushed my avoidance away, needing more space, which caused her to be more pushy and more controlling deep in her masculine, which had me just wanting to run or get aggressive. And there was violence and we were abusive to one another. And the police had to get involved and I pled guilty in a court of law because I actually slapped her and I had to figure out, how did I get there? How do I make sure this never happens again? And can I have a relationship that feels safe? And what I discovered was that I hadn't healed at a somatic level my attachment wounds, and my deep need for external validation caused me to choose a relationship and be engaged and ensnared in what's called a trauma bond. This push and pull dynamic. Come close to me, I need your validation. This is amazing. And then all of a sudden, just being consumed to the point where I lose myself. I'm disconnected from my purpose. I am not connected to my family, who I am. There's a blurred boundary between where I am and where she begins, which is called enmeshment. It's a lack of energetic boundary. At first, when it's just good, it's really good. But this lack of boundary causes us to have what's called enmeshment, where their feelings become our feelings. There's no separation between the two. And this becomes a volatile push and pull dynamic. And I'm writing a book about it called Becoming Trigger Proof, a guide to breaking free from trauma bonds, healing codependency, and attracting secure love. It's coming out next year, and I'm totally stoked to be sharing the journey with you. And what I've learned in working with these men who are super duper successful, multimillionaire, getting to a point where they built their finances to the point where they're living off their investment. They're not having to work so much. They're doing very well. And then the breakdown occurs. The woman wants to leave. She's done. She's had it. There is this anxious preoccupation with him needing to get his validation from her. She's shut down. She's not turned on. She's possibly even entertaining, dating other men, talking to other men, flirting, maybe even I've worked with that situation where there's an infidelity. There's a wake-up call that's happening because he felt like, oh, I'm just going to be successful and then I'm going to live the easy life, right? And then now she's talking about a divorce. And so I'm going to talk about the 3 major blind spots that results from this, that causes this. Why would a woman who's got all of her financial needs met, who has a guy who's willing to just give whatever, do whatever, anything to please her, and she just wants no part of him. She's fantasizing about the other guy down the road. She's Chad over there down the street in the neighborhood, or she's just checked out. There's no There's no openness. She feels resentful. Maybe it's polarity thing. Maybe we'll learn how to communicate with masculine and feminine communication. Maybe that'll be the fix. And while learning how to do masculine and feminine communication has been a game changer for me after I worked on healing my secure attachments, what I discovered is that using masculine and feminine communication and using polarity without healing the enmeshment, the attachment wounds first, is much like driving a Ferrari without a driver's license. Learning how to drive a Ferrari without a driver's license. And polarity is an amazing tool, but what I've observed is that it's only really effective on the other side of healing from our attachment wounds. This is another blind spot that I've observed in learning polarity and being in courses and stuff, is that polarity work is amazing, but if you're still emotionally immature and you're needing externals to validate you, then you're going to use the polarity work to attract someone, and it's very magnetic. With our students, when they start applying it, they're like, holy shit, people are treating me different. This one of my clients, his name is Curtis, anxiously attached, could not find a girlfriend. In all of his life, he will always friend zone, even though he's super duper successful, super duper good looking. He's an entrepreneur. He's got a lot going for him. But after about 3 months, she friend zones him because his anxious attachment takes over. And now after working with him now for only 3 months, he now has a girlfriend. He's shifted. He's claimed her. She's all in. She's fully surrendered. She's feminine. She's like, wow, this is amazing. And they've kind of like starting to talk about moving in and slowly kind of titrating a secure relationship. And he's like, I've never had a relationship like this before. And she's never, even though she's beautiful because of all of her past wounding, her traumas, she had not really felt safe enough in being in a kind of fully claimed relationship. So this is a first for both of them. They've never experienced secure relationship, and they're learning it as they go because of these 3 blind spots that were revealed. So without further ado, I'll let you know what they are. Number 1, why she wants to leave you even if you're rich. The first one is because of an unresolved anxious attachment. This anxious attachment, even though you're super duper successful, you could be super duper successful. This anxious attachment actually puts you on the underdog status. It pedestalizes the other person. It sets up a container where you are unfulfilled without their validation and approval. And even though you could be crushing it, making 7 to 10 figures, whatever, 8 figures, a year, the anxious attachment within an energetic relational dynamic, even though at work you're a boss, in the confines of a relationship, after about the 6 months to the 18-month mark of dating, that's the magic time where your anxious attachment comes up, where all of your unresolved attachment wounds start to come up, and you start to take on the posture of the one who's in the underdog. You immediately, no matter how much money you made, you immediately have put yourself in the underdog situation, and she can feel that. And deep down, she will feel anxious. She cannot surrender to that feeling of having a man show up as an anxious attachment. It just doesn't feel safe. She wants to be the anxious one, not have her man be the anxious one. That's the first one. When we don't get this right, you are constantly chasing, you're putting on a mask, you're hiding parts of yourself, you're constantly like posturing, and you're needy for external validation. And even if you do marry this one, you're going to want to do what I did in my first marriage, which is to seek that validation outside when my wife wasn't giving it to me the way that I thought that she should. Some of my clients, they'll use prostitution, they'll use sexting, they'll use fantasy, they'll use pornography, and that erodes our masculine core. And that disconnects us from our cock, our spine, our heart, our purpose, which leads me to the second blind spot of what causes a woman to want to leave even if you're rich. The second is her man is disconnected. It's because you, as her man, are likely disconnected from your purpose, from a purpose that's greater than just making money, a purpose that's greater than just getting her validation. A man who's connected to his purpose is willing to be disapproved of, is willing to hear rejection and it not sway him from his center. It's like me coming and sharing with you my journey, knowing that some of you are going to get super triggered and think that I have no right to be talking about relationships with the history that I have. Knowing that that is going to happen, and I'm still showing up and telling you what I think is a very important truth for you to learn if you want to have any chance of getting what you want in your relationship, which is what you deserve. You just got to be willing to tell the truth. You just got to be willing to get off your high horse. You got to be willing to get off your low horse. You got to be willing to humble yourself. And so when you show up disconnected from your purpose, which isn't your fault, it's like not something that we learn in school. It's this experience of being in service to something greater than yourself. A woman finds that super hot about you. And when you don't have that, a man who's not as good looking, not as rich, but is connected to something greater, she will feel a magnetic pull towards. But the blind spot is most of these men have made their entire purpose getting her validation. And when a woman will often say, she will often say, I want a man who makes me a priority. No, she doesn't. She thinks that that's what she wants. That's her woundedness talking. A woman does not want her man, a queen, does not want her man to make her his purpose. Of course, I'm not saying to make the purpose so important where you're basically ignoring your woman. I'm not saying that either. There is a healthy alternative where a man is deeply grounded in a cause that's greater than himself, whether it be to lead the family, whether it be to lead other men, whether it be lead a company, to start a company, to create some sort of a vision. A woman gets magnetized by the vision. That's what causes her to surrender and want to open up in every way. And if you're not connected to your purpose, she inherently doesn't feel safe in opening up to you, especially if you make her validation of you your purpose. And then she won't know how to articulate it. She will start nagging and whining and complaining because I'm just not happy, just not getting my needs met. I'm just not this. And she won't know what it is. So it'll come off as controlling, as whining, as emotional, as overly sensitive, as ungrateful. And what will happen is, unfortunately, because she doesn't yet know, this is what I help women with, is how to communicate those feelings and those experiences without blame and shame and judgment, which cause us men to go in our defensive. They don't know that. They don't know how to, if they haven't had the training, they don't know how to communicate that. They don't know how to integrate those kind of childlike parts of them, those entitled parts of them, and then really communicate properly. It comes out as judgment and blame. And what happens is you get on the defensive because it activates your insecurity. You think, God, why can't I win with you? Haven't I done enough? Look at all the things that I've done. Let me make you a list of all the things that I've done. Why can't you be more grateful? What's the matter with you? And what's happening is that makes sense that you feel that way because it puts us on the downside. It puts us on the back foot because we're now looking and going, look, haven't I provided for you? That was my first marriage, by the way. I was like, I'm entitled to you putting me on a pedestal. I was the narcissist. I'm entitled to you putting me on a pedestal. Look at everything I did for you. Look at all the stuff. You're living the dream. So why aren't you more open? Why aren't you more receptive? Why aren't you nicer to me? And I didn't know at the time that number 3 blind spot was that because I was emotionally enmeshed with her, I did not know how to emotionally attune to her and help her feel seen, help her feel understood. I would just get defensive and I would say, you shouldn't be feeling that way because I was enmeshed with my mother and I was reenacting all of that unresolved shit with mom, with my woman. And so it took a big breakdown. It might have to take that for you. You might have to have her leave for you to wake up, to actually do the necessary inner healing work to become more inspiring to her, to open up to, rather than entitled. Because that's the big blind spot as well, if I could be honest with you, if you're open to the feedback of what I'm hearing from these ladies, is that every attempt, which is not perfect, to share your feelings, which is an attempt to connect, you interpret those bids for connection, which is all she wants, as criticism. And you make it about you. And you make it, oh, poor me. Why are you always criticizing me? Rather than being able to integrate, being able to work with that shameful failure, rejected little boy inside and be able to parent that little boy so that you can actually help her. You become the little boy. You become emotionally immature, which then brings out her emotional immaturity. And you're now a bunch of teenagers going back and forth, trying to have a power struggle. And then you're like, maybe I should just start flirting and sexting and using porn. Boom, porn is never going to reject me. Boom. And now the polarity and the intimacy starts to erode. And now there's a lack of connection between the two of you. And now you're going to get those needs met with the children. And this is where, trigger warning, the term emotional incest comes in. Think back to your childhood. If mom and dad weren't connected, that energy of connection, if you had it downloaded to you, you started to feel responsible for the opposite sex parent. You became what's called enmeshed with them, that you're now the covert romantic partner because mom and dad were disconnected. And now, because of the child coming into the picture and all your wounds coming up, and you have no clue what to do about it because you're not entitled to know if you haven't had the training to learn, and going to a therapist once a week and telling your victim story and your venting isn't actually resolving it, then what's going to happen is you then get to reenact what happened with mom and dad, and you're now passing it down to the next generation. And the trauma of the divorce, of the energetic breakdown of the connection, goes into your children, and they repeat the pattern. This is why I created the Cycle Breakers Academy, is to help people expose their blind spots, to help people get honest and real, to help people take off the mask, to deal with those insecure parts so that they didn't keep acting it out in these sexual dynamics, to do what I never learned how to do, which is to channel that sexual energy, which is creative energy. It's beautiful energy. We either suppress it and hide it because it's bad, because of religious cultural conditioning, or basically turn into complete, like I did, man, whore, sluts that just want to everything that walks to get their validation through. And anytime we have sexual connection without emotional safety, it will become destructive. Why she wants to leave you, even if you're rich, because of an unresolved anxious attachment, because you're disconnected from a greater purpose, because you're an emotional, how do I say it? You're a child or a teenager emotionally. You don't know how to be with your difficult emotions. You don't know how to communicate them. You don't know how to set boundaries. You don't know how to communicate those boundaries in a really powerful, elegant, loving way. You are enmeshed. In other words, you're stuck in a childlike state, trying to break free into adolescence, and you're seeking that intensity. And you don't know how to channel that. And none of this is your fault. This is not about blaming men. This is not about blaming women. This is about elevating the conversation to being something about more than just blame, getting out of the victim story and understanding we're all victims and we're all perpetrators in this cosmic dance. And it's time to raise our hands and say, it didn't start with me, but it can end with me. There's a new movie out about that, about domestic violence. It didn't start with me, but it can end with me. I'm going to make sure that my family system, my son, doesn't get raised in that environment. And this takes me to my cause, my why. When I put my head on the pillow every night, I ask myself, have I been able to serve? What am I here to do? I'm here to serve, first, my family, my wife and my son, to have them have an amazing experience filled with love, and to serve my community of cycle breakers. If you're listening, that means you're in it. The algorithms found you because we are some sort of an energetic match. And if we're not, that's okay. I totally get it. You click one button and I don't know, you don't ever have to hear from me again. So you can contain some of the rage and the hate or whatever that you have. I get it. I know I'm not everyone's cup of tea. But what I'd love to do is to offer anybody who it fits a specific criteria that I know that I can help. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear more. I'm listening. I'd love for you to send me your backstory. Send me the email. Hit reply if you got this on email. Put it in the comment on my Instagram at Dr. Nima. Follow me there. Give me your backstory on social media, wherever. I'm listening. I want to hear your backstory and tell me where you're at. These are the specific people that this type of work is for if you want to get to a place where you now have a woman that enthusiastically wants to be with you, not out of guilt. She's not just with you for your money, and she's not just with you out of pity because you're going to turn into a 3-year-old if she leaves, or you're going to hurt yourself. You don't want her to stay with you for that. And here's the key. You're there, but you've also demonstrated some level of success in your professional life. Because if you are a man who identifies as that, but you haven't developed a sense of boundary and a sense of assertion within yourself to produce some results in your professional life, then your work is a little bit longer, and I'm not the best person for you. You would probably want to start with talk therapy, reading books, just get your shit together to the point where you're now ready to do the deeper work. And those who have actually produced results, that tells me that even though the work is difficult, you have the capacity, if you're dedicated to something, to be able to make the shift. to get to a place where your self-worth is no longer incumbent upon somebody else's validation or approval to you. That is true devotional masculine leadership. That's what attracts a beautiful feminine woman. That's what softens and opens your woman up. That's why she's so hard and kind of resentful, because she's not getting that version of you. And if any of these blind spots that I shared resonate with you and you're actually humble and open and you're ready to drop your ego and to put the narcissistic mask aside and to learn how to become the type of man that has your woman enthusiastically surrendering to you, whether you're with this woman or the next one, you're in a should I stay or go scenario, or you're single and you're like, there's something that I'm missing. My invitation for you is to send me your backstory. Tell me what you're dealing with. Tell me where you've been successful in your career. Where have you demonstrated proficiency so that I can know that you have some inner resource to be able to step up, right? You're not on a bed of quicksand is what I'm looking for. And I want to hear from you, and I want to see if there's any blind spots. And what I'm going to get you to do is say, Nima, can I have some help seeing my blind spots? Put that in. I'll read it. If I can see it, I'll return. I'll respond. I'll reply to you. If I have time, I'm doing my Everesting challenge this weekend, and I will hop on a call if I feel the pull, if I'm feeling it, if I'm feeling that there's a genuine desire and you're not just kind of like dilly-dallying, like it's go time. Those are the people that I love working with. Guys like Joe, who shifted their marriage around. Guys like Rob, who was in a push-pull dynamic trauma bond with an avoidant, and he was the anxious. He dropped in, did the work, let her go, and is now in the most secure relationship ever with a woman who is totally over the moon about like how lucky she is. Grateful woman, a grateful, surrendered, respectful woman. I want to hear from you if this is what you want. It's possible. You're probably going to have to hear some critical feedback. Your ego's not going to like it, and it might feel like a kick in the dick. But this is kind of like the big brother energy, strong, loving, masculine leadership that is needed for men to give to men rather than looking for a mother. The reason why she wants to leave you is because she's fucking tired of being your fucking mother or therapist. And it's time for you to man up and step up. Leave your takeaways in the comment section. As always, I read them. I'm curious. And send me a DM with your backstory. I'm listening.